start at Muddy Brook and with Katie, and just tell us a couple nice things that are happening at Muddy Brook. We'll work our way up to Ben at the middle school, and then Christy and Julian and Zoe at the high school. Then right after that, we've got 3 students waiting in the wings, and we're going to give them their awards. Okay, so Katie.
This month we celebrated a couple of things in community connection period. We had Fire Safety Week. We had firefighters from Great Barrington that came in for 5 different days in a row to talk to the different grade levels and share questions and hear some too much information type stories from some of our kiddos, but it was a good period for them. We did have parent-teacher conferences yesterday, some were in person, some were virtual, so it's kind of choice of the families. We keep hearing a lot of feedback that the teachers have done a really nice job for this and started off the year really positively, but still there's the angst out there about where schools are after that year. So at least everybody's on the same page, knowing what's in place. And we have been doing our math classroom visits for looking for math habits and routines. Administrators did it last week, and it's ongoing right now, actually. The 4th grade teachers are going to have peers visit their fall from all these math classes. And if you haven't been able, please check out the pumpkin patch in front of my Brook. It's one of the art installations, again, during community connection. It's in the style of the artist Yayoi Kasama. It's very cool. It is really nice. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
So lots of fun things happen at the middle school these days. Getting outside. One big thing that happened, we did our first field trip with an entire grade, which is really good. It's pandemic. 5th grade just went on a nature study, not too far afield. It was felt really good. Science curriculum. We kind of went out and did observations, but we were able to just get outside and spend the entire midday, so part of the day outside for the hike, and doing observations, which is a lot of fun. 6th grade also did their annual hike up to Monument Mountain, which is fabulous. We were able to do that last year. It's a great activity. And Team Orange and Team Green, our 7th and 8th grade, done a lot of fun activities, built some community, but a great one is their annual tie-dyeing activity. They bring in a t-shirt with dyed orange and green. It's built up some school students. That's been a lot of fun. In terms of students, we had our book fair. As you know, we did really well enough that in a week or 2, we were going to get our watermelons with me. It's like we worked for really actually smashing some of our previous records for finding books. So there. And a lot of really interesting stuff around professional development. We, as Kate mentioned, we had a teachers development group come in last week. Really great work with math teachers, getting classrooms, talking about the mathematical mind and reasoning. The real focus of learning math. It's really great to see how we can classrooms and talk about learning and teaching. And then our PD yesterday was really strong. We did a full hour on social emotional learning, and Zach Hassel, which is a group out of part of the state, national work around social emotional learning. He was really appreciative of really stating the context and why around what we're doing, and some of the conversations. And we spent the rest of the afternoon getting ready for student-led conferences. Really excited about that. We had teachers piloted last spring. So in December, what we're going to have for our parent-teacher connections, the students are there, a whole presentation on how they are there in school. So they're going to lead their own learning and talk about how they're doing, also set goals, really understand where they're going in school years. So I should be really excited for their students. So
Great. Thank you, Ben. So Christy, do you want to frame anything before the students say something?
Yeah, I have a few things that I just wanted to highlight as good news. Last night we had our 9th grade open house and it went very well. It was a small turnout, but the folks who joined us, I think, were pleased with the information they received. Our 9th grade team, Matt, Gordy, Kathy, Ed, Jolynn, Tara, Elsa, Beth, Jamie, they all worked really hard at putting together great presentations about the curriculum to help parents better understand the work that their students are doing in the classroom every day. So I want to just thank the team for all of their hard work on that. Ben and Katie already mentioned the TDG work. Yesterday at the high school, we were engaged in restarting and diving in a little deeper on proficiency work with Dan Liebert from Great Schools Partnership. I want to thank Val Ivy and the senior class officers for all of the work they did last weekend on homecoming. The homecoming dance was beautiful. I think students had a really good time. I want to thank the Great Barrington Board of Health for allowing us to have it and working with us to make it happen. The senior class was able to raise $2,000. That'll go towards supporting their prom. We had a dodgeball tournament yesterday on our half day, and that was to raise some money for girls basketball booster. And the students were really engaged and having a great time there. Halloween window painting is happening tomorrow. So there will be 80 plus students descending on downtown Great Barrington to do the annual Halloween window painting. And we're excited to be getting back to that in the traditional sense. And then finally, I do just want to remind folks the end of the quarter is coming up. It's November 3rd, and we are having our virtual parent-teacher conferences on November 2nd. So I just want to give a shout out to Kara Stoughton and Tom Roy. They've been doing a lot of work supporting the staff in getting a calendar invite set up so that we'll be communicating that out early next week. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible for parents to be able to sign up for virtual conferences with teachers. So thanks.
Great, thank you. And Zoe and Julian?
Yeah, it seems that often what we have to say overlaps a lot. I wanted to just sort of echo Serena and the success of homecoming, sort of feel like the year was one of a normal year, and how they're doing in that space together. Again, it was great. We'll see how that affects everything. We were lucky to be able to get more tickets, and we were really able to include the majority of the student body. So it was once again a great opportunity to bring everyone together. The state tournaments are happening. So tonight, boys and girls soccer teams are playing, ending out their regular season before senior night tonight. And the state and Western Mass tournaments will be happening shortly. So that is really exciting. It's really a feel of excitement and spirit in the air, which is something that we didn't have at all last year. And we really miss it since 2020.
Yeah, on the artistic side of things, like video painting, there's tons of student participate, all that is something and then the dodgeball tournament was a smashing success. In terms of some student wellness updates, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. People are kind of finding rhythms. Some people are finding themselves more of a rut. Lots of people are getting sick at the moment, which is somewhat difficult when people are missing class time and struggling to catch back up. But we're really rapidly approaching the end of the first month of the year and it's feeling much more like a real goal and rewarding year.
Great.
Freshman days are going to be efficiency days for this first marking period, which is a milestone.
Great, well, thank you both very, very much. What I'd like to do now is transition to 3 student awards. One of my favorite things I get to do is occasionally give awards to people along with diplomas in the springtime. So we've got 3 awards. Each of these is a really big deal, and we have 3 remarkable students that we're giving them to. So let me start with the first one, which is the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Certificate of Academic Excellence. This is a great award, and I'm really proud to recognize Bailey Carlson. So give us a wave, Bailey. Great, thanks. The oddness of doing this in Zoom. Bailey's a member of the National Honor Society. She received the RPI Medal for Math and Science at the Junior Awards ceremony. She's active in Best Buddies, Pathways, and Charlie's Fund. She tutors students in science and math. She's worked at Kutcher's Summer Camp as a camp counselor. So Bailey, congratulations. This is what your award looks like. I'll drop by school tomorrow and hand it to you and take a picture. We're very proud of you. The next one I'd like to share is, and just hang on a sec, the National School Development Council's Award for Academic Growth and Student Leadership in Learning. And this is sponsored by the New England School Development Council, which is a group that's been around for a long time, that does a lot of work with our districts and other districts in Massachusetts and all of New England. So the first awardee of this is Alana Doran. Alana is well known to us because she served as the Mass Ideas student representative and as a student leader in the YATS initiative. She received the George Eastman Young Leaders Award from the University of Rochester. She's a Pathways volunteer and was part of the NYU student redesign team. She works at Berkshire South Regional Community Center. So congratulations, Alana. And this is what your award looks like. We're also very proud of you. And last but not least is Maya Velasco. Maya is a member of the National Honor Society. She received the Bausch and Lomb Junior Scholarship from the University of Rochester. She's active in Pathways, Project Sprout, Charlie's Fund, and at the St. Mary's Parish. She plays varsity basketball and lacrosse. She took college dual enrollment courses at BCC and STCC. She worked during the summer at Tanglewood and Frankie's in Lenox. And she's interested in pursuing a major in college in biomedical research. So congratulations, Maya. And Maya, this is what your award looks like. Okay, so again, I'll drop by the high school sometime tomorrow and hope to catch you and give you these. Again, we're very proud of all you've done on your own and as role models and people who are supporting other students, particularly younger students at Monument. So thank you. Thanks to all 3 of you. All right, so we're going to move on now. At our previous meeting, we talked about MCAS data at the elementary and high school, and I contextualize all this stuff and the scores in the context of a global pandemic and what that means. Tonight, we're going to take a little bit of time to go into that data at the middle school, and I'm going to have Ben talk a little bit about it. You saw the sort of the 2 or 3 data sets I shared before. One was the absolute performance, looking at our classes and grades in English, science, and math. As a reminder, all grades in the middle school are tested, so grades 5 through 8 in English and math, and grades 5 and 8 in science. We also looked at the growth scores, but in particular instances, those were limited because there wasn't testing the year before. So, Ben, why don't you come up and dive into it a little bit? What the other principals shared is sort of what the data say or suggest, and some of the work we're going to continue to do around it.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Thank you, and I appreciate your supporting me and being able to do this today. So we have work to do in the middle school as we always do. I'm really proud of the instruction that we do, and we really invest in the whole student. So
Peter, it might be good if you let him use your computer because he's very hard to hear and you can't see him at all.
Okay. Yeah, Ben, want to just sit here in the middle and
I'd be glad to. Thank you. Here. So thank you very much for having me today. I'll just start again and really do appreciate the chance to do it a few weeks later. But really would like to just say how proud I am of the work that we do at the middle school in terms of instruction, really just investing in the whole student over the past several years, really privileging not just the pieces of a student where their performance is measured on the MCAS, but also the parts of the student that make them really great citizens. And actually,
no, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt him. I'm rebooting it because it appears it's not working. Okay, keep going.
but I'm live, right? Still.
You're live on my computer.
Perfect. Thank you. So the big investment that we've really done is in social emotional learning, which I really just appreciate in terms of building up the whole student. So that being said, the MCAS scores are relatively consistent across the board for us and follow a lot of the same patterns that we saw across the county and really across Massachusetts. One of the things that we've been working on is an investigation into math curriculum. So just looking at our math scores, we skirt at the state average for many years, and we've skirted below that in other years. And this year, the same way, we've skirted just below the state averages, but pretty consistent across the county. But we need a strong curriculum. We've been really dabbling in a lot of different pieces over the past couple of years, and a big response that we're going to do is last year we did some conversation and we invested in illustrative mathematics, which is a 5 through 8 program. There's actually a K-5, a 6-8, and a 9-12 component to the curriculum. And we bought that curriculum literally for the entire 5th through 8th grade program. And it's actually dovetails really well with the teacher's development group, the work that we do, looking at the habits of mind and habits of thinking that go along with math. We're excited. We just started implementing it in 5th and 6th grade right out the bat. And then 7th and 8th grade, we're doing some reviews, and we're going to start implementing it in a comprehensive way in the next several weeks. This year is really about setting it up. And I'm really excited about next year when we really had a whole year under our belt and really start to take advantage of it. In the same way, in terms of science, we invested in an Activate Learning curriculum called iQuest. It's an integrated science curriculum, and it really is a way for us to start doubling down on consistency in the science program. So we have 5th grade is really the first year that they take science every day in their educational experience. We've been investing a really strong in STEM in 5th grade over the past several years. So we moved away from departmentalization of English, math, science, and social studies, and really moved towards humanities and STEM, which has been a really good, exciting thing for kids to make connections. And so we're really just looking to invest in science in the 6th grade as well, which we've been building a curriculum, but the 7th and 8th grade curriculum really think is going to start building a backbone for our students to be able to really work on content that's aligned to the frameworks. And as well, looking at literacy, we've been working on our reading and writing program with SRSD. That's the self-regulated strategies for development for students in writing. But we've also have the new social studies frameworks, and I was talking about this last night, finance subcommittee, really investing in curriculum around that. So the big push, I think, in response to these MCAS scores is a focus on curriculum. We've really been focusing on instruction, I think, for the past 4 years, as I said, around the whole student. And I think it's time to start focusing, now that we have that set, on curriculum. I think we'll start to see some increase in scores for that.
Okay, any questions from anybody on the committee?
Or anyone in the audience also? Great, cool. Thank you. Thank you for your computer, Peter. Okay. I just want to check in. I'm sorry that we've been having some sound issues. Can you just raise your hand if you can hear us fine? Okay. So the next thing on the agenda, and it actually may make sense, Steve, is if you let me do this, is for me to give my COVID-19 update first, and then we could talk about the potential vaccine thing. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on with COVID in our district these days. Pool testing happens on Wednesdays and Thursdays, so we don't have that data back yet. For the moment, we have one active case, and that's at the middle school, and nothing at the other buildings, and no positive test as part of our pool testing. We did an analysis of the percent of young people that are vaccinated in each of the buildings and at each grade level. And it's a little imperfect because the nurses are able to use the state system to look up people who are vaccinated within Massachusetts, but we're unable to look up people who are vaccinated in New York or Connecticut. At the high school, we're at 80 or within a point or two of 80% in all 4 grades. At the middle school, in 8th grade, we're at 71.7% vaccinated. And in 7th grade, we're at 81.1% vaccinated. There's students, particularly in the 7th grade, who are young for their class, so they're ineligible for the moment to be vaccinated, but that's a very high percentage rate, the 81.1. In 6th grade, 10 students have been vaccinated, and many students are just at this moment ineligible to be vaccinated, though there's the possibility the CDC will announce something next week that changes that. And no students are eligible to be vaccinated in 5th grade. And by extension, I don't believe any students are eligible to be vaccinated in the elementary school because they're all too young. So that's pretty good. On the state's official report, and that's a little more confusing, we're under the 80% mark in our towns, but the towns include more people school age than our own students, right? So there could be people living in our 3 towns, our member towns, who don't go to our schools and are vaccinated or in the case of the state percentage, are not vaccinated. That's bringing down the average. The whole reason I'm bringing this up is I think it's germane to the discussion of if we wanted to do vaccine mandate or do something to encourage more people to get vaccinated. The commissioner did mention, and a handful of districts have applied for this and gotten it, that while it remains a local
school board decision. If a community is above 80% vaccinated, then they could make the choice to not wear masks. We've argued that we don't love that idea because then the remaining 20% that aren't vaccinated are wearing masks, and from a enforcement standpoint, it's terrible, right? And it also separates young people, it causes a whole host of issues. So one thing that you might want to consider in the broader conversation, and I imagine this will be a conversation for several meetings, and that nothing gets particularly decided tonight, is what are your thoughts about the 80% as a threshold? There's nothing that says that threshold couldn't be 85 or 90%. And what do you want to do there? There are, again, contextually, there are a small number of communities that have mandated vaccines for students as part of school. Amherst did it and Cambridge did it. And then I heard yesterday, and maybe others, those are just the ones on my radar. And then I heard yesterday that Belchertown mandated vaccines for students participating in extracurricular activities, which is sort of parallel to what we did around pool testing. Okay, so that's the update. The case count has gone up again a little bit. So the last time I looked at it, it was 160 per 100,000. We're really hoping it gets down around 60. It's not going in the right direction for the moment. It's going in the wrong direction. And in my conversations with public health people, there are some more cases locally than there have been for a while, and those cases eventually get into the broader case count. So I think that's all I got. Becky, do you want to add something? You have to unmute yourself.
Sorry. While I was listening to you, the pool testing results came back and they're all negative. There's no positives.
Yay.
So that's good.
Yeah, thank you. That makes my day. And every time it happens, I knock on wood and hope we can continue this streak.
We both do that. Thank you.
Okay.
One point of clarification, a minor point, but when we're talking about the 80% thing and masked and unmasked, and vaccinated and unvaccinated, isn't it that as long as 80% are vaccinated?
Peter, I can't hear a thing.
Okay.
It's Corey's break here on Peter's computer. I was just asking a point of clarification about the 80% rule and how that actually works. Because my understanding is that if people are meeting that 80% threshold, then it's not about vaccinated versus unvaccinated. It's that somebody has deemed that then it's safe to go without a mask. And so it doesn't have to become a have and have not. It's just a personal preference thing at that point. And I'm not advocating that, but it's just something I think we should clear up before we move forward to decide what we want to do in that situation. Because we just keep coming back in this room.
So what you're saying is that 80% of our students were vaccinated, didn't know.
That's how it's worked in other places. And I'm not saying that that's a great idea, but yeah. So.
It would probably be productive for the administration to draft the proposed vaccine mandate for all students and a proposed new mask policy, potentially just leaving the percentage blank, and we could for discussion at the next meeting. Not that I don't want to cut off discussion now, but I think we got to start reducing something to paper. And I view the vaccine mandate and the mask mandate as something that at least should be discussed in tandem. And they're certainly related. I'm not saying they have to be dependent, but
yeah, I will get some clarification on that. I'm not 100% crystal clear on it, so I don't want to speak out of school on that right now. The other thing I think that if you wanted to pursue this, I have to reach out to the commissioner's office to request the possibility of doing it. So you need to get, as a district, we need to get permission to do it. And then after we're given permission, if you wanted to do it, then you could vote to do it.
It seems to make sense that what it says, that we have something in front of us that we can then discuss. Weren't planning to vote tonight anyways, it's strictly a discussion. But, and it also makes sense that both of these are parallel. If you have a vaccine mandate, a mask mandate is less important. It would seem to me.
Yeah, so what I'll do is, I think I hear you loud and clear. I'll commit a couple things to writing. I'll get counsel and advice from the commissioner's office and our school district attorney, and then I'll bring something back at a range of possibilities at the next meeting.
But one of the things that's fairly simple is that we know there are 2 or 3 towns, districts that have done this. We could look at what policies they have.
Right. The separately, the advice I've been getting from the commissioner's office is it may make sense to wait till the dust settles around some of the federal decisions before we move forward with anything. But in the 2 weeks between now and our next meeting, all of those things may likely be resolved. They may be resolved tomorrow or next week too.
And I imagine a discussion point with a vaccine mandate policy would be a start date. So, I mean, that kind of plays into what you just said. I mean, hypothetically, if we're discussing mandating all students who are eligible to have a vaccine, we'd have to pick a date of which they had to be vaccinated. And I could see different thoughts on that. You know, you want to be fair to people, but you want to get the benefit from it. And maybe a longer time allows those federal issues that you're talking about to play out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, LA did it with a vaccination date of, I think, the start of school next year. Okay, so
But Amherst did it 2 weeks ago for November 1st.
Right. So I'm going to read something. One of the nice things about having thoughtful people around me is sometimes people send me emails. They're like my live fact checkers. So I'm going to read something from the state guidance. As of October 15th, 2021, if a school demonstrates a vaccination rate of 80% or more of all students and staff in the school through an attestation form submitted to DESE, then vaccinated individuals in that school would no longer be subject to the mask requirement. In alignment with statewide guidance, unvaccinated students and staff would be required to continue wearing masks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have you seen anything or change, Peter, for transportation requirements? Because all students are required to wear masks on transportation. Have you seen anything change in that?
No. So as I understand it, and this is what's so confusing, that there are like multiple competing jurisdictions. So transportation falls under the feds. So students having to wear masks on buses remains in place the same way if you got on an airplane or took a ferry to Martha's Vineyard, right? So even if we were to go down this whole path and do the thing, it appears for the time being the federal guidance is requiring people in transport have to continue to wear masks. So whatever we do, like communication's an issue, right? And if we move away from masks in the school setting, there'll be confusion that we have to continue to mask on the buses.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, this will be on the next agenda and probably a few more. Corey, go ahead.
I guess I just want to,
Oh, hold on. Hold on. Corey, go ahead.
I'm muted, yeah, or I'm unmuted, but I'm muted on my computer. I would just ask the administrators and asking you to ask your teachers to do whatever possible to think as creatively as possible to keep some kind of remote learning going on for when kids are sick, either from a positive pool test or just the general cold. Because I think it's makes it really hard to do the right thing and stay home when being home means that you are going to be under a mountain of work and catch up. And we don't want kids and parents having to make those decisions. So,
Yeah.
do you agree?
We
I
have,
gotta talk about
No.
Sorry,
Can you mute yourself?
I appreciate it, and we have an obligation to share work with students, but we're under very specific guidance from the commissioner to not provide remote learning.
I understand that, we can call it something else, but whatever can be made, whether it's work being sent home, whether it's recordings that kids can access after the think as creatively as possible.
That's gotta go through the administration. It doesn't go through students telling their teachers.
Right, so at the time you're bringing it up to the administration, because I don't know if the administration fully appreciates the pressure and the choices that are being made on a day-to-day basis for kids going to school or not going to school, whether it's COVID or not.
Yeah, I kind of understand where you're coming from as far as pre-COVID, a lot of kids would just battle through a cold and just go because they didn't want to make up the work. So now you might have kids who have a simple cold, but they don't want to, risk until they get COVID results. So there might be a trend of more kids being out. And if for those kids,
The schools are asking that children stay home.
right, exactly. So for those kids, make it, and I agree that we can't do remote. Remote is, off the table. But I mean, just have what you're asking the principals and the staff realize that have a home plan in place so that they're not burdened an extraordinary amount when they do come back, which I think, I'm assuming has been the case always, but I think it's a good idea to bring it back up and reimagine that, because now there's gonna be more kids to not have that added pressure of weighing, well, if I miss 2 days, I'm gonna have 2 weeks and I might not get first grade. But we don't want them to risk it or come in if they have, cold or cough, etc.
Great, I do think we can't offer remote learning, anything like what we did last year. No one wants that, I don't think. But we do have ways to come into school and not report symptoms, because the system for getting makeup work is currently really difficult for students and teachers, and with the numbers of students that are out for whatever reason, which I'm working more now with people in junior and senior year for colleges, with them coming out on top of people who are sick or any other number of reasons that they're out. It's a lot to do that students, and I think it is leading to thinking when they're sick and possibly.
I'll talk with the principals about it at our next meeting, and we'll try to find some sort of balance, right? The commissioner is clear that he doesn't want us doing remote learning, and that beat the heck out of staff and was very hard. If somebody's out for a day or two here and there, in all likelihood, with a little prodding, they can catch up and be in good shape. If somebody's out for multiple days or weeks, if somebody breaks their leg and they're in the hospital, obviously we'll provide them with supplemental material and tutoring. I think we can address this in a way that's fair and reciprocal. And if you have a big paper due on a Friday, and you're out the 2 days before the paper and you're unable to finish your paper, that might be less about being sick for the 2 days before and more about planning 2 weeks ago to set aside the time to be ready. Okay.
Okay, let's move ahead.
So the next thing in the packet, and this is a little unusual, is a request. I just want to make sure I didn't miss it. A request from the Waldorf School, the Berkshire Waldorf School, to co-op with our football team. They're a small school with an enrollment of about 50 students. They're too small to have their own varsity teams. They joined the MIA last year, so they could be eligible to co-op with local schools. And they'd like to do that in some areas. They'd like to do it in football, soccer, basketball, and baseball. The only team that we co-op in now of those teams is football, and they'd like your permission to co-op with us for football. They think they have 4 students who are interested in trying out for the football team in 2022. In recent years, our football team has been small in numbers, large in spirit, small in numbers, and this might help. I'll leave it to you to talk about it and decide if you want to vote on this proposal.
Do I have discussion or a motion?
I make a motion that we allow the Waldorf request to join all the teams listed on a co-op basis.
The only team listed is football.
Football, okay. No, I was just hoping they had some 6'10" guy that would be good for basketball.
So do I have a second?
Second.
A motion by Bill, a second by Bonnie. Discussion.
It'll be really important that they are taking the next year, so we'll see where we are with the pandemic, but we have to meet all of our requirements.
Absolutely.
Which at that point, probably wouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. Anyone else?
I think it's fair to say, second only to Peter, there's no one who supports Jason, who supports our football team on the committee more than I do. It's not just my passion on the committee, it's my passion in life, the Monument football team. It's meant a lot to me. But I also think that you can't let your personal biases interfere with your principles. And I don't believe that private schools should be allowed in MIA to begin with. I don't think private schools should be allowed to compete with public schools in any sports. So I can't in good faith support this proposal. Private schools are just that, private schools. People who choose to not be part of their community and to educate their children privately choose to do that. And they have a right to do that. But part of our sports program should be aligned with our curriculum program. We spend a lot of time talking about social emotional development and all of these things. These are things that people in private school opt themselves out of. So as much as I am invested in the future success of the Monument football team, I can't do something that I think compromises the principles of the district. So I will be voting against this proposal.
Anyone else?
Don't we allow homeschool students to be on the teams?
I believe, and Krista, you can speak to this, I believe we're obligated to by state law.
Yes, we have to.
There was a fight about that when I first got on the committee, and we were told that that was a requirement.
Yeah, many of us were questioning that at the time, and we didn't have a choice. Anyone else?
I had a couple questions. One, the way things are now aligned with different divisions, if you co-op, you automatically get bumped up the division. So this is going to hurt in our district on the team now by being put up another division. I am 100% 100% against it. I think that's something maybe Carl could ask. Now, the thing working for us is we already are co-op with Mount Everest. I don't know if we had a second school that co-op that bumped us up another division, or because we co-op with Mount Everest, we're already bumped up a division. That would be a big check in the no column for me. The other thing is, out of these 4 kids, how many of them are in our district, live in our district? Because again, it gets back to what Bonnie said about the homeschool. If there's kids in our district that are, I agree with Rich said about, the division, which MLA should be as far as private public, but, are these kids in our district, or are these kids from New York State? Are they from somewhere else that happen to go to this school? Then I don't feel the obligation that I do if they were kids in our district. So I'd like to get that information as well.
Just as a point of information, the Mount Everett kids that play on our team don't live in our district.
Right, but we have if they're another public school, and we have a long history of co-ops, not just in football, but, lacrosse, crew, I mean, with all the other public schools, it's, hockey, we send our kids to co-op with hockey down there, they send our kids to football, so it's more of a symbiotic relationship.
Right.
Reciprocity is a key to the co-op program, and we've done very well on striking that balance over the years. It's provided diversity to our students and other students, and there's been a balance. There's been consideration. There's no consideration offered on this. There's no scenario sports programs that would be supporting our students.
So, Steve, I'm hearing 2 things that I don't have a good answer for right now.
Yeah, so this isn't until next year.
Do we just want to postpone this?
If Bill can withdraw his motion and Bonnie can withdraw the second, we'll put this on the next agenda. It's fine. There's no hurry.
I withdraw the motion.
And Bonnie withdraw through the second. And can I make
Yeah, I withdraw my second.
Can I make a request of administration? This is 2 meetings in a row where we're talking about athletics. We have an athletic director who has a fancy title and a big salary and doesn't show up for our meetings. That's never happened before.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I did not anticipate those questions.
Doesn't matter if you do or not. If we're talking about sports, we have the athletic director here. If we're talking about something else, I'm not saying it's his fault. We need to invite him.
Agreed, and I'll take full responsibility for that. I've been out of school for a week with a family emergency that I've been dealing with, so this slipped by me. This is my fault, not Carl's. I will own it.
I think you've done a good job. I'm not, but this is 2 meetings. This has happened, and I know Steve Souls had to come to many meetings, although lately he slipped by when he just sits there for 2 hours and then goes home and has no reason for him to be here either, but he's here. So, is he on?
He is on.
Steve, I didn't see you.
Yeah. I gave him special dispensation to not be here in person because there's nothing on the agenda.
Exactly my point.
In fairness to Steve, it does beg kind of a procedural parliamentary question for us, because the general public can't just send a letter, and that's who this is, just some member of the public who sends a letter, and suddenly now we're at a voting stage.
Yeah.
Obviously, you as the chair always have the discretion to put things on the agenda or not, but I don't think anything should be coming to the committee without a recommendation from the administration either way.
So to be clear, I did have a very long conversation with Carl about Waldorf School's request, and football was the only sport that we decided together met the criteria for doing a co-op. And the criteria for doing a co-op is that our team is small enough that we could benefit from additional players in co-op. And that's why the other sports that Peter listed are not ones that are viable. We do not need to co-op with.
Christy, just to cut you off for a sec, I think what Rich is saying, and Rich, correct me on this, that from a procedural standpoint, if a request comes in like this, then attached to the request should be a memo from either the principal or me stating what our position is around the request with some facts and evidence that gives you the information to make an informed decision. And while that happened behind the scenes, the formality of attaching a cover letter to something, which we do in many other areas, right? If a student wants to petition us graduate early, the student approaches the principal writes a letter supporting that. If there's a field trip to Argentina, the teacher requests the trip, the principal checks the dots and writes about it.
And honestly, an executive summary usually is done on any topic like this, and it just didn't happen. So that's fine. We have the fall of next year to decide. And I think we all knew that this wasn't going to be just a unanimous decision. There's a lot of pluses and minuses for this, especially when the football team is concerned because they have so few members. So, but we will take this off and we'll put it on a future.
You know, the facts are though, the football team's at about a 10-year high in numbers now, and the middle school program is as strong as it's ever been. So that information should be readily available when we finally consider this as well. And the record right now is as good as it's been in a long time.
I agree.
Okay. So let's move forward. The next one, and I'll give a little context on this, and then John can talk to it as well. Several meetings ago, I came to you to ask for a full-time paraprofessional to work specifically with our English language learner students. Since that time, our numbers continue to go up. We did a search for this magical paraprofessional and we're unable to find one. In fact, we have 6 or so paraprofessional vacancies across the district. What we're hoping to do now, and John will talk a little bit about this, but we brought in some consultants to analyze where we are, what level students are at, how much time and class time they're entitled to, and it's a very specific formula. And we find ourselves in a position where I'd like to ask to trade in the unfilled para-professional position for a teacher or a 1.5 teacher to fully meet our needs. Okay, so John can talk in explicit detail about this. Yes.
Oh, can you pass those out? Did everyone get those? Oh, great, perfect. Turn my camera on, sorry. Can everyone hear me? Yes, good. Okay, so we have in the packet, there's a letter, I won't read the whole thing, but it was just a justification sort of. In Berkshire Hills, we have a rapidly growing English learner population. It's grown over the last decade every year, but in the last year, it grew 40%. So we are currently, I think we're at like 7.7%, 7.4%, sorry. No, that's Amherst, sorry, 7.7. It's growing quickly. And we were not prepared for this. We had over 20 new students just this year come in, and many of them came in the month of September after school had already started. And we anticipate more this year. So we have a huge increase in the population, but also we have many of the new students are what we call SLIFE, or substantially limited or interrupted formal education. So many of these students are at the level 1 area in the scoring for EL students, and they require extensive supports and targeted instruction.
Yeah, and just to interrupt for a sec, so the real challenge with the SLIFE students is, in all likelihood, they're not literate in their own language. So imagine trying to learn Mandarin, not reading in English, right? It would be almost impossible.
Yes, thanks. So our population has grown exponentially, and we see the need for increased English language teachers or ELD teachers. We've worked with the Collaborative of Education Services and we'll continue to work with them in developing a plan going forward. And the consultant is in agreement with me that we should ask for at minimum 1.5 FTE to fill this. We do have, we can support this via the ESSER grants for the next 3 years. So we're not asking for money right now for 3 years to do this, but we will need to think forward in planning for even more increased population and get this into the budget in the next couple of years before that grant runs out. So that's it. And then I had just the levels and the number of students in each grade level. We have 27 students at the high school level right now. Then I'm just including the level 1 to 4 students, which are the ones that need the increased, that need the direct instruction. And we have 27 students at the high school. And in order to meet those needs, we would need 9 to 13. And this is 9 would be the minimum according to the state guidance, 9 to 13 classes for those students. A teacher at the high school teaches 5 classes, is that correct, Christy? 5 classes, so 9 to 13 is 2 teachers we need at the high school. And then at the middle school, we have a total of 19 students in the level 1 to 4, which would need about 6 to 8 students. 6 to 8 periods. And the teacher at the middle school, again, Ben, is 5 periods as well. So that's more than 1 teacher at the middle school. The elementary school is much more difficult to determine the number of students because kindergarten students only need monitoring. So if we take there's 22 students in the elementary school and they're spread out all over the place. If you have the chart on you, they're across all the grade levels. So that's more difficult to understand, but the consultant and I and the elementary teacher have already discussed ways of altering or changing the schedule to meet those students' needs to meet the state guidance.
I had a question. So you said the first 3 years are covered by, what grant was that?
That would be ESSER 3.
So is that specifically for English second language, or is that?
That is just a portion of the ESSER 3 grant.
So can that money be spent on anything else, or is it only tied to?
Yes,
No, it could.
So theoretically, if we're taking money from a general fund, that could fund anything or any students focusing on them, is that correct? So, which follows my next question. So, and I'm not, I guess it could be you as well, is the extraordinary funds that require to educate these children, are these reimbursed 100% through either the state or the federal government, or is that all on the taxpayers?
No, this is under the one of the federal grants, the recovery grants. This is under the large grant, the third grant that we received from the feds.
But you get more money because we have this high of a percentage, or?
No, they give us based on.
No, we do, it lags a little, so incrementally we get more money. To date, we've had a very small number of English language learners. As that number gets bigger over time, and I always mix up, is it Title III is the federal one for ELS, right? So we will get some money there, but it won't cover the full cost. And then as the state calculates our budget every year, the same way we get some additional funds for students with IEPs and special needs, we will get some additional funds for English language learners, but it won't fully cover the.
It's not fully, it's an unfunded mandate, once again.
I don't know if it's fair to say it's an unfunded mandate, it's a partially funded mandate, right?
I mean, it doesn't absolve the fact that we need to educate these kids and do the right thing, but it's just, from a fairness standpoint, from a state and federal level, it's not the right thing.
Right. In a minute, when we're done with this topic, we'll start talking about the grants in general, and you'll see both how many grants we have. It's almost overwhelming, and the range of resources that are coming in. So that doesn't undercut your argument at all. I actually agree with a lot of what you're saying, but when you have broader context, it may be a little better.
And just to play devil's advocate, I could say that the lost learning that these kids in the district, all of them have had the last year and a half, requires everything we're getting and a whole lot more to make up for the lost time and lost education. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thankful for what we have, but that's still not enough in my eyes to make up for what we've lost.
So ideally, you're looking for us to create a 1.5 FTE for ESL,
Correct.
additional 1.5.
Yeah, but we're pulling the para off.
Correct.
So just in simple math, and Sharon, you can correct me on this, but a para might make 25 to 30,000 in a year, and the salary would be, and the benefits would be 20, and the average teacher salary, and who knows where we get somebody on the scale, but it might be around 55 or 60, and the benefits continue to be 20.
Right, but the motion we would have tonight would be to take back our motion to have a para ESL, and instead have 1.5 FTEs per teacher.
Correct.
So that would be the ideal motion.
That would be the ideal motion. The more tempered motion would be to do 1.0 for a teacher, and we struggle to make it work. Where I'm a little uncomfortable is, and John did this analysis really well, is if we don't have enough periods covered, then we stop meeting the service requirement, right? So, and then you get into potentially compensatory services because you didn't do something, or a big argument with the state about you had the resources, why didn't we do something?
So let's try, if somebody's willing to make a motion.
I make a motion that we hire 1.5. Second.
Before we accept that, do you want to also reduce the paraprofessional that we approved at the last meeting? In that motion.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's the board, right? The board can't hire one.
Technicality.
And remove the ESL para.
So I have a motion by Ann and a second by Molly. Discussion. Yes, go ahead.
Can I unmute for,
Let's try it. Tell us if you can't hear, Cory.
does it make sense actually to keep the para position open to provide more flexibility in hiring? To give any sense of whether it could be a lot easier to hire a teacher than it was a para to do it open?
Yes.
I think it would make sense to keep it open just so we've got the maximum amount of flexibility to try to get someone. We wasn't asking.
Yeah, when we have so many reserves right now, we can't hire that.
Anyone else? The roll call vote, Ann.
Aye.
Jason. Aye. Sean. Sean, I see you. Just unmute yourself.
Aye.
What's his picture? Oh, I think he's unmuted.
Sean?
Aye. You hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's your vote on this, Sean?
Aye.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Aye.
Molly?
Aye.
Bill?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Cory?
Aye.
Rich?
Yes.
And I, it's unanimous.
Okay. So the I think last major thing for our meeting is connected a little bit to our homework, and What Sharon and I wanted to do was to really update you on where the grants are, and there are a number of things in your packet speaking to this, and we can walk you through it. Let me just get it in front of me. There are two documents that I think are important. One looks like this, a little blue timeline, and this is of where all the grants are and the years they're in. And the other is a really nice grants overview that Sharon put together. The high level thing, and then Sharon and I didn't decide who was going to talk about it, but maybe we'll both talk about it or both respond to questions. But there's some grants that are called entitlement grants, and those are grants that we get every year based on a particular number of students, and those students fall into a range of buckets or have characteristics. So the first big one is Title I, and Title I is really there to support low-income students or students from low-income families. When I came here as superintendent, or when I applied to come here as superintendent, the free and reduced lunch rate was around 15%, and now it's around 40%. All right, so that's a huge shift. In the same time, and this is why it's even a bigger deal, the federal government raised the bar for that. So there are, well, the percentage is higher. From a dollar perspective, it's harder to find as free and reduced or free and reduced lunch eligible. So that's one, and that's about $200,000. Title II supports professional development. All right, 30,000. Title IV is around arts, fine arts, foreign languages, STEAM, other innovative programming. That's $11,000. IDEA is the big federal grant around individuals with disabilities, and that's $433,000 and change. There's an early childhood special education grant, and that supports our work in pre-K. Then and this is the first of several federal funds, there was the IDEA American Rescue Plan, and that was a one-time $80,000, and that's for students with special needs connected to the pandemic. There's an early childhood one connected to the pandemic. Perkins is a federal grant for career and technical education. Rural Sparsity Aid is a state grant that Adam Hines really championed. We used to get about $40,000 a year, and this year it's $105,000, which is huge. And we've done all sorts of things with that. Then the rest of the grants are competitive grants. The 21st Century is our after-school 21st Century Learning Program. So that is Project Connection. It's almost $500,000. And we've had that for 11 years. There are two Berkshire United Way grants. One supports Project Connection at the elementary school, and one supports Greenagers at the middle school. There's a Berkshire Workforce grant that supports staff stipends. There's a MyCap grant that helps the guidance folks do some work. There's the Bar Foundation grant for this year, which is $300,000. That's the one that's working with the 10th grade team, and we've talked about that, I think, quite a bit. There's the Great Barrington Community Impact Grant, which is the marijuana mitigation money. This past year, it was $80-something thousand. We applied this year for another $100,000, and we're
under the impression that they're about to start reviewing those proposals. 2 giant Department of Justice grants, and I like to describe them as one's about hardening the schools and one's about softening the schools, right? Okay, I'm sorry, I missed one other one. The Skills Collaborative Grant is a new grant this year, and that's the one around the pathways at the high school, and that's, I believe, $75,000. So the Department of Justice grants, in part, it'll support radio antennas and radios and professional development with the police folks and an anonymous reporting system that's text-based and monitored and vetted at the federal level, as well as some of the work with on anti-bullying, mental health, and anti-racism. Now we get to these ESSER things. So ESSER stands for the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Education Relief Funds, and there's 3, what do the finance people say? Tranches, right? There's 3 separate funds connected to ESSER. So ESSER 1, it was entirely about COVID. And a lot of those funds were, it was $80,000 sanitizing. That's when we thought like sanitizing was the answer to everything, right? And lo and behold, it's not the answer to everything, but we were wiping down everything and hand sanitizer crazy. So that was the first round. And we had to share some of that with the private schools. The second round, is ESSER 2, some more of that, but sort of transitioning to more learning stuff. And then ESSER 3 has some very specific guidance around what's okay and what's not okay, with 20% has to be focused on lost instructional time. Some stuff can be around facilities, training, professional development, cleaning, instruction, technology, mental health, just about anything under the sun. And also attention, and maybe Jason, this clarifies the other one, attention to disaggregated subgroups. So low-income children or students, students with disabilities, English learners, racial and ethnic minorities. So a percentage of it has to go to that. We have wide flexibility in which groups we think need support, but we are committed to paying some of it or investing some of it.
Right. We have a lot of other special needs students though.
Yeah. No,
We can spend that on as well.
right. Totally. And the total amount here is $1.2 million. And then we have 3 years to spend that. As you continue to go through the sheets, you'll see where the ones that we know we're doing is committed. There's some, like the rural aid, that we just got the 105. We can show you what we've done in the past, but that one is not committed. So that's one that we have a lot of room to play around with. The Berkshire United Way, the Project Connection, the bar is all very committed and tied to outcomes. The next place where we really have flexibility is the ESSER 3, all right? And then here you'll see, and I don't quite want to get to the bottom of page 7 yet, because I thought it would be interesting to end tonight's meeting by having folks share a couple ideas that they came up with as part of their homework around what's valuable, and then to open our next meeting, Steve, with the administrative staff going into some of these things. I got a few emails from school committee members with a range of ideas. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay, is go around and look, one person had 27 ideas, and I don't want to ask that person to share all 27, and they were all really interesting. And then a couple people have 1 or 2 ideas, but to quickly go around and say, wouldn't it be neat if we looked at this? If you're not comfortable with sharing an idea right now, and students can participate in this too, just like say pass, but if you have one, I'd like to document it. And mostly why I want to do this is I think we'll garner some good ideas. And when we come back with our recommendations, I think we'll see a lot of overlaps. So if it's okay, we'll just go around in the room first and then other places. Corey, do you have a couple ideas?
Yeah, I think I'm not having a very loose understanding of what the Atlantic was. I kind of came up with my own priorities that I saw as being big to all the different ideas were around business technology, wellness, professional students, career path progression, and further DEI initiatives. And so it was everything from diving into additional hires, I think the grant coordinator, which would be helpful, project initiative coordinators, school to community organization liaisons, things like that. And then the infrastructure investment, as well as thinking around building up technology in the room to further, further technology and kind of some of the needs that we found we had remote learning needs, not saying we're going back to that, but I think there's some benefits from there. Making sure laptops are in every kid's hands that don't have them and that needed to be borrowed so that they don't have to come back in at the end of the year. Other things around EV chargers and all of the buildings, et cetera. And then wellness, furthering a lot of our integration with our happening already. Career stuff around pods, virtual reality type work, a dedicated college counselor for the school, vocation programs, I'm the 27th.
So I just as we, I know, I love your list. As we pass the talking stick to Ann, and don't feel you have to top Corey. 2 or 3 is fine.
I think it's important that all the kids have access to technology at home, and I know there's kids who do not have laptops at home, and apparently they're not available. So I think that's really important. We should kind of find those systems as well. And then lots of experiences about how the doors work, how are we at work? I can go mountains. It's great for everybody. Study mountain hill or go on hike.
Yep. Great. Molly? Okay. Okay. Zoe?
Yeah, so I think that there are costs that are, not necessarily associated with students who take part-time classes, but definitely a burden on families. Like paying for AP classes, going and buying tracking calculators for $100. And I think basically provide support for if you reach out for, apply for it. But if we have one that goes to just guarantee support.
Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think we're going to use specific sort of group on this list. I decided to sort of get the front liaison, and just to sort of managing the group is on the list. We started on this yesterday at the finance committee meeting, and really working to have a dedication being able to sort of bridge that gap, that we find between parents and teachers, and also working to support the community of research that certainly will highlight nice, of having a certified list of teachers and positions, that are dedicated to certainly make sure that every student learns certain
Jason?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts were that obviously put the money where, we would help the kids who are most affected academically, social emotionally over the last year disruption. So my thoughts were, try to continue lower class size. That means extra teachers if possible for the next few years, more para subs. Your John would say we were with problems, tracking paras, so maybe use pay or benefits. I don't know what the answer is, but, to support the kids who need it. Now, also, obviously a chunk of money for the kids who were affected in a more substantial way, the special needs kids. For that, I would defer to them how that was Kate, et cetera. Also, my thoughts were to support the teachers because they're the key into making up this lost 3.5 times. So, whether it's bonus check, I know some system districts in the Commonwealth have given bonus checks to the ones who came showed up each their person, whatever else, maybe they get their idea to help support them because it's going to be difficult for them in the next 2 years. And also just, from a nuts and bolts, I like the float nurse. I think in the next few years, it's still going to be significant to have that extra nurse in the building, maybe during the district, maybe going forward, indefinitely, but definitely in the next few years until all these Delta variants and whatever kind of fizzle out.
Yeah, great. So Steve, often you like the last word.
No,
So
okay, I'll go. That's fine. The two that I look at the most, one has been stated many times, is technology. I think that we lag behind a little bit. We've done really good in the last few years, but I think we could take that next jump. And the other is CTE. I think we've taken huge steps with CTE, but using this money to take the next steps would be tremendous. I think one of the few topics that when you talk to everyone, and I do mean almost anyone, that they say that's what's needed in South Africa.
Okay.
There'd be very few people who would disagree.
So let's try to catch up with the 4 online members. Bill, I see you're raring to go. What have you got for us?
Jason filled my list. As I said to you, I wanted to listen. I think emphasis on adding teachers in special ed is really important. I think guidance is another area. Pam Morehouse is the only, what is she? She's she has a special designation. She's not a guidance counselor.
Yeah, she's a school adjustment counselor. She's a social worker.
Yeah.
To clarify, there is a psychologist in that building too, and a clinician, but you're making an important point.
Yeah. And something that, because I haven't been at the school and I haven't talked to Christy about this, so this might come as a surprise to her, but we had a thing in the 1970s that made Monument really outstanding in the spring, and we called it Mini Course Week, in which regular school was suspended. And we brought in, through the teachers, a great deal of different courses that made that week exciting. For example, ballroom dancing, history of rock and roll. At the former principal who grew up in Boston taught a stickball course. I would think that with financial incentives, and I know that faculty is straight out with not hearing this word about more things to do, is I would love to see something done in the spring and some finances put toward renewing Monuments Mini Course Week. A couple of years ago, a teacher got a hold of me and asked me if I had the file for it. I couldn't find it. I was on part of the planning of that committee in the 1970s. And we created for about 3 years, every spring, a mini course week where kids came to school to learn things that would not be ever thought of as part of the normal curriculum then, and certainly even now would probably be a little out of the norm. But since we're looking at building a better school and new designs for schools, that would be where I'd like to see some money go toward.
Great, thank you. So we've got 3 other school committee members online. I'll go to Bonnie first and then Rich.
Most of the stuff has been covered previously, but obviously the students that are in most need, I was thinking maybe an additional early K, because I know right now it's the children that meet that criteria that are the oldest. They just missed the cutoff for kindergarten. Maybe being able to screen more young children and having another early K so that we're getting a jump on some of these kids that are needing it down the road. Definitely staff appreciation and like what Bill was saying, student and staff, building, because not only is the classes something fun for the kids, it's team building between the staff and then also with the kids because it's all something new.
Okay, great, thank you much. Rich, are you at a loss for words, or do you have some ideas?
I agree with a lot of the points, and I look forward to fleshing out a lot of things you've heard. The one my one unique thing, I guess, is I think this is a real opportunity to up our game in the communications and community engagement piece. I've talked about this at various times before, not very articulately, but I'd like to revisit that. We heard at numerous points during the great presentation from the people from the Stoke Initiative. They immediately at first class touched on our communications issues. I'm always honing in on the fact that I think that our administrative staff is pulled in too many directions, and I think that's a great opportunity to free them up to be focused on our kids. There's tremendous opportunities around our website, their capability, their maintenance, design. There's tremendous opportunities around improving how our board conducts business. We got to a great result on a very difficult curriculum issue back in the spring. I think it would have been an easier path with better communication around that. So things like newsletters, reaching out to the community, things like that. I mean, every organization of this size generally have one full-time person dedicated to that, and we have a complete vacancy in that. And I think you would immediately see dividends in terms of increases in school choice if the good work we were doing here was more effectively communicated outside. I think you'd immediately see dividends in terms of the problems that we faced, the Stoke group is really engaging with us on. And I think we get so much the benefits from having better community understanding and buy-in as to the education that's going on here would pay for itself. So that's and I'm willing to, I'll touch base with you during the week if you want me to kind of reduce my ideas to a job description type thing or something like that. However we want to bring it forward next week.
Yes, no, that's great. I really appreciate it. So Sean, if you got something to say, you have the last word.
I think everybody pretty much covered everything. So yeah, I mean, I would say technology improvements really should be looked at, and like Steve was saying, the CTE, whatever we can put into there would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. The one person actually, the true last word, Diane Singer, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Peter.
Did you got anything else to add to the really good list?
Yeah, I took a tour with Buildings and Grounds of that house that's beyond the tennis court. And I thought that the money, if it was put toward a renovation of that house and maybe move the art department out there, would make some room for maybe automotive or other CVTE up the hill.
also, there was a pretty glass library that was part of the original renovations plan that was beautiful. And I wonder if that money could go to making a beautiful library in the front of the school. The other thing that always goes overlooked is the track and the tennis courts that both need to be resurfaced and are used by a lot of students, not only for gym and teams, but by the community.
Yeah, no,
There never seems to be enough money for that.
yeah, good.
One interesting part of all this, and I've seen a lot of grants are wonderful. The key is to spend it on things that after the grant runs out, doesn't increase your budget by 25%.
Right. So, I mean,
That's the real key, because things are all great, and then after the 3-year grant is out, you either have to drop the program, which is ridiculous, or you have to fund it, which is sometimes impossible.
Right.
So that's the really balance.
So the really good news, and this was really just to prime the pump, there are a bunch of really wonderful ideas, and some of these overlap with things we've been thinking about, and some of them are new and we've not been thinking about them, and some of them are easily doable, and a couple of them probably aren't, right? Like it's too much money or it's not an appropriate use of funds or whatever. But the good thing is we're not just talking about sort of brainstorming around the 1.2 million for ESSER money, but we're talking about all our work going forward. And as everybody's talking, I was writing down some notes, and folks wouldn't know this unless they attended the finance subcommittee where Steve was talking. But a really good example is the tennis court and the tennis courts and the track are both on the capital projects list already going forward. And a bunch of these other ones are too, and some of them aren't. And the DEI work can likely be funded by the Department of Justice for the next 3 years. So that frees up space in this money to fund other things. Okay, so I appreciate that folks took the time to brainstorm about this and share their ideas. At the next meeting, we'll come back with some of our initial thinking about it, and then we'll hammer out something that makes sense. We'll also continue to do outreach to staff and students and families, and get their thinking about this too. Okay, so thank you very much on that. Just my last thing before we go into the subcommittee reports, there were a couple places where we were a little disjointed tonight, or I was a little disjointed tonight, and my apologies from that. The next meeting will be a little sharper.
Subcommittee report, policy is not met, buildings and grounds.
Have not met.
Superintendent's evaluation.
We just had a meeting.
Thank you. Technology does have a meeting scheduled.
Next week on Wednesday at 5:30 here or virtually.
Rich, Finance Subcommittee.
We met yesterday and reviewed the special education and middle school budgets. The presentations were both excellent. There were some very thoughtful, areas for growth, proposed increases in the budget. Nothing so earth-shattering that I think I need to bring it to the committee now, but it was a good discussion. And we did get into a little bit the expenditure last year, which our committee spent a lot of time talking about on the math curriculum at the middle school. And I think that was a very, very positive conversation. So we're continuing to go through. At the next meeting, we will do the high school and the elementary school. And of course, any committee members are welcome to sit in if they'd like.
Thanks, Rich. Personnel report, Peter, anything you want to highlight?
No, a lot of stipends, people doing good work. I think I'm for that.
Business operations, sure.
We have a very small transfer report for Q1. We have 4 transfers, and most of them, I just want to point out the third one, as Ben has been talking about. They've been putting in a lot of time and effort in updating their curriculums, math and science, and that journal number 27 shows that. And the rest were additional supplies or texts. And again, we never know, things change between February and October, so it's a small report.
Motion to approve the FY 22 first quarter transfer report. So moved. Thank you. I have a motion by Jason and a second by Ian. Any discussion? Roll call vote. Ian?
Aye.
Jason? Aye. John? Are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here, yep.
Okay, thank you. Bonnie?
Aye.
Holly? Bill?
Yes,
Diane?
Yes,
Corey?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
And I, it's unanimous.
Then the last thing we have here is a memo on excess and efficiency. Given the unique nature of the last 2 school years, we had a significant E&D. We had it certified at $2,117,751, which is about 300,000 over my projection in June. And most of that is due to the premium holiday that we had for the health insurance. I know that I expect, because I already had 1 or 2 questions, if this means that our assessments are too high. It really is the unusual nature of last year. We did have an agreement with our negotiations with our transportation providers so that we only pay 88% on any days that were, excuse me, that we were remote, which we were at the beginning of the year, and 45% for the 10 days at the beginning of the year when we didn't have school at all. So that produced some significant savings. We also didn't have much professional development external. We did have our contractors that we worked with. We had that grant covered. We didn't have much travel. We had the health insurance premium holiday. So it was a very unusual year of subs. We usually tens of thousands in subs, and we didn't have that last year. So I would say that when we get back to a normal year, we're not going to see that kind of increase. But the good news on that is we're only allowed to maintain 5% balance of the subsequent year's budget. So we will be returning $601,165 to the towns, and it will be proportioned based on the percentage of assessments. Great Barrington will receive $448,291.14, and both Stockbridge and West Stockbridge, if you remember, they are identical this year in their assessments, will receive $76,436.93. Now, we won't actually be writing them a check for that. What we'll do is we'll send them out on their quarterly invoice. We will reduce the invoice by this amount.
Any questions on this or comments?
I have a comment.
Too bad it breaks my heart for turn on this one.
I tried.
I know.
It's unusual. The folks who like to spend E&D in the budget might have a stronger argument this year than we have had in the past.
Yes.
You always have a very, very strong argument. Pencil pushers always shoot at that. I do think in the communications over this to the towns, it may be a good jumping off point to highlight to them that Bill's been pushing for us to do for a while, that next spring, we're coming to them with a big ask to fund a design either of our own accord or through an MSBA project. And I know my town, Great Barrington, has done a good job preparing themselves financially for that ask, and I hope that this return fund also goes towards their efforts to prepare themselves for that. I mean, at $1 million design, we're giving them enough money to pay 2/3 of their assessment already. Maybe the school committee chairman could pen a letter to the select board chairman explaining that position.
You know, it's interesting, Rich, that you bring this up, and we won't prolong this meeting, but none of our asks or wishes in grants was to use that money for school design, which may not be appropriate for any of the grants, but didn't even come up. Anyone else? Seeing no one else?
I just have one quick thing.
Of course.
So in the written communication section, we got a letter from the Massachusetts Nurses Association to our towns and school committee, and they're just advocating that and it's interesting because they're not writing this to a regional school district, they're writing this to a town school district, but they're advocating that the towns use the American Rescue Plan Act money, which is what towns get, not what schools get, to support nurses, contact tracing, all the rest. I think we're doing that to a degree already, but they wrote a thoughtful letter, so I thought it was worth sharing.
Any old or new business before the committee? Any public comments? Giving everyone a second. So I see no public comment. Then I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of litigation for personnel, chapter 38, section 21A, number 3. The school committee will enter into executive session immediately following its regular meeting pursuant to Mass General Law 38, section 21A, 2 and 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation for personnel. Holding this discussion in open session may have a detrimental effect on litigation. The school committee will not reconvene following the executive session. Do I have that as a motion?
Do I have to say the whole thing?
Just say so. So moved. Do I have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Ann? Aye. Jason? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Bonnie?
Aye.
Molly? Aye. Bill?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Corey?
Aye.
Rich? Rich, you're never short of words. Where are you? Thank you. And aye, it's unanimous. So, Peter, can you just explain how we're going to do this?
Right, so in a minute, I will end this meeting, and the school committee members have a separate email with a secure link to the executive session.
Thank you.
Okay, and if anybody gets mixed up, text me or email me and I'll help you. Have a good night, folks.